Okay, let's sew a button on. So what I'm going to do, because this sweater is relatively light and lofty and these buttons are a little bit heavy, also I always do this just because I find that it doesn't distort the sweater as badly as it would otherwise. Okay, so I'm going to use a backing button. These are basically small, clear, really cheap buttons. And I'm going to take this button and I'm going to thread my thread up and down through it, and then actually work my thread back between the strands so that it catches on the knot. Because working with a backing button can feel a little fiddly, so it helps to actually just have this anchored in one place. So I'm going to take my needle, now that I know my backing button is anchored, and come up under where I need that button to be, where I marked it with my pin. Okay, and now I can take the pin out and grab my front button. So here's my button, and it's got a shank, so I'm just going to thread through the shank and then thread above where I had that pin and catch the backing button. It doesn't really matter which hole of the backing button I'm catching, but whichever one I catch, it will then become the top hole. So I'm going to snug that up, which you can now see I've got button on this side, backing button on this side, and I'm going to go down through the other one and make sure this is untwisted. There we go. And start pulling through. So normally when you would, just loop through the shank of the button, you just have to remember to catch the backing button. Oops. Let's see. There we go. Yeah. So the first couple times it's going to be a little wonky. So basically anytime you come to the back, you're going to go through the backing button. Once you get everything a little snug, sorry, bumped that. Once you get everything a little snug, it's easier. Like I went down, at the edge of my shank, and it went right through the backing button where I wanted it. So just every time you're coming through the back, so like here I put through the backing button, I'm going to go through the shank, pull that all the way through, and then you go down next to the shank, which puts me back through the backing button. Okay. One thing that I also love about backing buttons is that it gives you a nice place to anchor your thread when you're ready to tie it off. So I think this last one will finish this. Here we go. So instead of, if you ever have to take your buttons off for washing or for button repair or anything like that, it makes it really easy to catch your thread and cut it off, so without damaging your sweater. So I'm going to thread my needle, or push my needle through all this collected thread in the button, and then do one more time so I have a nice loop here, and I'm going to go through my loop and snug everything up, and then just tie an overhand knot to keep that from coming undone. Okay, and so you've got this nice chunk of thread right here that you could easily cut when you are needing to take a button off. And it gives a little more stability to the heavy buttons on the front of the sweater. So like, while this is hanging, you would normally see that like this would probably pull down and pull forward and the button wouldn't face up. But because of the backing button, it's much more stable. And also if you pulled on this button, it doesn't distort the fabric so much. because it's got a whole base of this backing button.